and we can summarize our recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously there's been a lot of discussion and questions answered, I think, during the meeting, but I'll summarize key points and then come back for specific recommendations that we can take forward in the future. Okay, so we started with the relationship between the climate emergency and net zero, and there was a discussion around that. And then we moved on then to the specific issues around the lack of progress with the strategy itself, and particularly in terms of the relationship between emissions and the supply chain and how that should be more of a priority. We had a discussion around whether there was something more that we could do around procurement contracts, and whether that was an issue for us or whether there were just similar issues for all local authorities in Wales and public bodies in that respect. We also addressed issues around the government structure, the balance of streamlining. Do we need to take more time and resource, or whether this will be possible at all? 2030 being a specific issue about the relationship between ambition and strategy. And then we addressed the issue of taking the public on this specific journey and whether more emphasis should be put on that. Some of the officers noted that the final report from the Carbon Trust could put much more emphasis on how the public could be taken on this specific journey, and some of the approaches that we might adopt. And then obviously there were issues in the discussion amongst members about the UK model as it could be described, and the Welsh Government approach, 2030 and the steps towards 2050. And it was noted that, and I think this is something Zach brought up in particular, that waste and recycling had also started as an ambition and became a sort of a statutory framework evolved to manage that, and that's the context in which we've operated. And in a UK or Welsh Government context, that's a framework that might evolve for net zero, but we're certainly nowhere near there yet. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion around the £59.2 million or the £60 million framework and what was involved there, and how that might evolve. And again, the examples were proposed in terms of how that might evolve in terms of the sort of diesel to electric lorry journey, in terms of procurement. There were issues, again, in the discussion around practical and tangible investments leading to specific benefits. And there was an emphasis in the report about initial costs rather than future value, and whether more emphasis should be put on whole life costing than certainly there is at the moment. And then there were questions also about whether there was pressure to make decisions because of 2030, or whether there was more emphasis in terms of value for money judgments in a more traditional context rather than with the emphasis on decarbonisation. And that there seemed to be that it was easier to do things in terms of, say, EV charging points, LED, which led to sort of no regret options, doing anything more ambitious, there simply isn't the capital available to do that. And the strategic context is not really there currently. There was also a discussion then around the sort of what was described, although I suspect this wording isn't going to survive into the final version, the fractured management across departments, particularly around fleet decisions, and whether if that was more centralized, it would be easier to make more ambitious decisions. The home to work mileage issue was brought up in the context of the Governance and Audit Committee. And there was a discussion also about the decarbonisation board and how it met, and so on. There were lots of other issues that arose, but I think I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. Do I have any suggestions or contributions to make for our recommendations? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as I said right at the beginning, we're fortunate that we had a expert organisation to have a look at our current work provision and do an assessment and provide us with our report. But the report was written by that organisation. It wasn't written by officers. Yeah. So my later question about the board, it meets every 6 weeks. So I'd like to know a couple of things. One of the things I'd like to know is, what do they do in those 6 weekly meetings? Yeah. As an example, I think they could send us the last set of minutes from the last meeting to give this committee a flavour of what actually does go on. Are there standing agenda items that they should be considering? Yeah. Overall, though, what I would like to see is, I would like to see an action plan addressing every one of the points raised in this, draft report, but nevertheless, it's not going to be far off the final version. So I'd like to see an action plan with timescales addressing every one of those issues. And I think that's a reasonable thing to ask. I think it should be brought back in front of this committee at some future date. Can be part of our forward work programme, but detailed analysis of what's gone on, what the barriers are, what the challenges are, how they can improve. I mean, we talked about the engagement issue. That's one thing that could be, expanded on. We talked about the 59 million and how they got to that figure, and give us some examples of that, and we talked about that as well. And also in terms of bringing the public along, the public would want to see concrete examples of why we're doing what we're doing and the cost, etc. So for me, a report that outlined all those issues would probably encapsulate everything that we've been concerned about today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Who's the next on my list? Councillor Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one, really, but looking at the line graphs on pages 39, 40, and 41 on in the appendixes, I'm not sure 2030 is really achievable, to be honest, be it not a legal requirement. Suppose the question is, are we alone in this in Bridgend County Borough Council, or is this a Wales-wide issue at local government? So is it worth the Cabinet or the leader asking the Welsh Local Government Association on their views on, is this a Wales-wide or a Bridgend County Borough Council specific? If it's a Wales-wide issue, I think we should encourage the Welsh Local Government Association and BCBC to write to the Welsh Government explaining our concerns. That is 2030 an achievable goal? Do we have to amend that? Do we need to change it? Or yeah, no, that would be it. I think it's if it's a Wales-wide issue, the Welsh Government needs to know about it and whether they put their money where their mouth is. If this is the goal that they want to be achieved. Obviously, if it is just a Bridgend County Borough Council issue, we've got a lot more serious questions to answer, because what are we doing wrong that every local authority in Wales is doing right, I suppose, if that's an analogy to use. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. And in a sense, I guess it's like the emperor's new clothes. Are we just, is everyone too scared to speak up and say, actually, it's not achievable, and no one wants to be the first one? So it probably is a good recommendation to ask, is everyone else in the same boat? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very much along the same lines as Councillor Pratt. I think we should be following the UK model, and I think we should be writing to Welsh Government and say that it's unachievable in its current form and financially prohibitive. I think we should be looking at 50% by 2032, 75% by 2037, and 0 by 2050 as per the UK model. I probably think you'll find that is legally binding. But I think to use pie in the sky just to say, look, we did it 20 years quicker than the UK government, which was political, I fear. I think it's madness. When we're going to be making teachers redundant in schools before long. And I just can't get my head around it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Bledsoe, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I think the proposal by Councillor Pratt is a very sensible one. The one thing the report doesn't state is whether this is isolated to us or is more of a nationwide issue, and perhaps we do need to be the leaders on this. The UK government came out with 2050. Scottish government, they said, well, we'll do it quicker than you, and then the Welsh government came in and said, we'll do it quicker than both of you. And there's no point having a target if it's unachievable. The figures put in front of us today show that, I think by your calculations, even doing a third at 60, 180 million pounds for this to work, well, not possible when Welsh government are telling us that our settlements are going to be flat for years to come. So let's find out if we're on our own. If we're not, let's take the lead. Let's write to Welsh government and say, very, very good that you gave us this target, but we can't get there, and we don't believe others can. Just very briefly as well, I'd like the recommendations perhaps to be recognising what we were told, that this is draft, this is very early, that we should be proposing that a political lead should be on that committee that's proposed in the report, that perhaps it should be the cabinet member with responsibility for the portfolio. There should be some form of political sway in or voice, more precisely, in that committee, and Chair, if possible, although everything that I've said goes before, we did sign up to deliver this. The progress on so many lines is disappointing, because regardless of whether it's 2030 or 2050 or whatever it's going to be, we signed up to be in net zero by 2030, and then external bodies looked at the progress we've made, and I think damning is probably too strong a word, but so many ones on a scale of 1 to 5, it's quite depressing that we have, it's not the 59 million, that we have spent money on this move towards carbon neutrality, but we've made no progress on so many lines that we need to be raising our concerns on the lack of progress on things that could be quick wins in there as well, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Echoing, I think, the contributions of those before you. Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know how to put this as a proposal or a recommendation or which way, but as I stated before, and I know some of my colleagues rejected it, I would just like to say I think it's very important, and I mean very important, that the people not only of Wales, but the UK understands that the drive for climate change here obviously has its merits, but the cost to achieving this will have no benefit to the United Kingdom whatsoever, other than producing a cleaner air environment. And unless the rest of the global world, particularly the major polluters, are escalating their projection to reduce their carbon footprint and neutrality, then it's outweighed. We will have no control on climate change, and this is what the experts are telling us. whatever we do at the moment, we will have no control on climate change. Our sea levels will rise, our different temperatures, our extreme weather conditions will continue, while the rest of the world pursues the policies they've got. And I think it's important, and I don't know how to highlight that. I'm not against going for a carbon neutrality whatsoever, but we have to be on the basis of being realistic and telling the people the truth in the UK. The fact that it will make no difference to us unless those, as I reiterate, those major producers of carbon that pollute our atmosphere through human activity, unless they come on board, whatever we do will have no effect other than the basic one that everybody agrees upon, the experts. We will have a cleaner air environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. We'll see if we can incorporate that into a consensus position. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Because of Councillor Bledsow's comments, I was a bit confused, to be honest, because like I asked the question, didn't I, during the meeting, you know, in terms of the proposed change in the governance structure. And it's clear from the report that it says the programme board will be chaired by a cabinet member. But looking at it in more depth, I really don't understand this. It appears they've got a programme board, but they've also got a steering group. So it looks like the programme board has got a certain number of people on it, and the steering group has got, from what I can see, the same number of people without the cabinet member. I'm looking at page 15 of the report itself, the appendix, current governance structure. So I got to be honest, I'm a bit confused about why they want a programme board and a steering group. So in terms of the future, they did say, didn't they, about, you know, there was a diagram somewhere about what they envisaged it would look like. Just trying to find it now. But there is a proposal around what it would look like. But I think the first thing we should do, because governance underpins everything, doesn't it, is what the hell are they proposing to do? And I don't understand it. It's not clear to me. And I did ask the question, but I think they were responding to the programme board and not the steering group.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Davis. Meryl?
I was just going to suggest perhaps you might request clarity on the two different board, steering group and membership, and then maybe you might want to make a further recommendation based on that, if you're happy. The other thing I was going to say, Chair, is obviously viewed from individuals, so I'm assuming there's consensus on everything that's been said here now, and there's no dissent between what's been proposed as recommendations. And just to tidy up, I suppose, because we've heard from Councillor Pratt, Councillor Williams and Councillor Bledsoe about proposals, and they were slightly different. So is the committee suggesting then Councillor Pratt and Councillor Bledsoe said, are we alone in this? And if not, we write to WLJA and encourage them to write to Welsh Government with concerns. Councillor Williams said write to Welsh Government and propose to align with the UK. Do you want to merge those into one, or what are you saying? What's the consensus?
Well, I was just going to, I thought we'd got to the end, and Councillor Pratt's come back and Councillor Blundell's appeared. So can we hear their point, and I'll try and summarise where I think we are, and then you'll tell me why what your consensus is better. But Councillor Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to talk on a different point, but no, I just listening to what Councillor Jenkins was saying, and I do have to say, on a level, I do agree with him. You know, what the UK does, if no one else does, it pales into insignificance. But he said he doesn't know how to make it into a recommendation. Now, the simple one would be get the leader to write to the Chinese government and insist that they that they carry on through with their net zero policy. But despite the many powers that our leader has, I don't think they would listen to it. I think it may be worth, if that's the route that Councillor Jenkins wants to go down, that we that we know we write either as a solitary local authority or as a collective to the the Prime Minister, I suppose, as best as any, to that we continue our pursuit for net zero, and that he does everything in his power to chase the other powers around the world, that they continue to do the same. If Councillor Jenkins is happy with that, on the background of my proposal, which, yes, I would agree has been sort of muddled a bit by Councillor Bretzel, Councillor Williams. I would stick to mine that there's a strategy on this, that we speak to the Welsh Local Government Association and encourage them to write to the Welsh Government if this is a across-the-board issue. Obviously, again, if it is just a Bridgend County Borough Council issue, we're going to have to bring it back here, because that asks for a lot more serious questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Blundell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I won't put my camera on because my back is spasming, so I'm currently propping myself up, so you don't want to see me grimace. So all I was going to say is I agree with Councillor Pratt that we should find out where everyone else is before we can make any decision on any changes that we can make, because we need to, we're not alone. We all need to be going as 22 local authorities to the Welsh Government on this. And I agree with sort of Councillor Pratt's second point on Councillor Jenkins is, other than I think I made the same joke about myself writing to the leaders of China and India in the last scrutiny meeting. So I think we need to get the leaders to write to the Prime Minister and say, using his power to make sure that the world's largest economies, also including America, plays by the same rules, and we all try and work towards net zero at the next COP. I think it's 29, I think it's the next one. I might have lost count there, but those are the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. And Councillor Davis, final word.
Yeah, just I made a point about the supply chain issue, because that is the biggest carbon issue, and because we don't control it, they decided not to do anything about that. And my point was, well, come on, there must be something you can do. And I mentioned procurement contracts. So I would like them to look at what they can do around the carbon footprint of our supply chain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and thank you, everyone. So to summarise, Meryl, my take on that is that our recommendation is that the cabinet and the cabinet member review where we are, review whether 2030 is actually achievable, because what we have understood is that we don't think it is. In tandem with that, to perhaps devise a new target to review where we are. And please put hands up if I'm relying on hands going up if I get it wrong, to review where we are. Again, in parallel, to write either directly to Welsh Government or in association with WLGA to make sure that everyone else is on the same page as us, and that we're all finding it difficult to achieve. And again, in parallel with that, to write to the Prime Minister to remind him, to remind his peers and those in the UK and overseas that unless we all act together, then our efforts will be of little value. The second sort of tranche of recommendations then was with regards to the report itself, the apparent poor performance, the nature of the fractured structure, and so on and so forth. So we would like the report to be concluded, to the issues to be addressed, and to come back to us at a future point. I think there was a third, but I think I've wrapped up that into those two. Is that you're taking it, Meryl?
Yes, all except there was some talk about whether the final plan needed to go out to consultation, and whether you wanted that to recommend that it go out to a 12-week consultation.
Is everyone in favour of that as well? I assume my first bit of summary was okay because no one put their hands up. But if everyone's okay with that consultation piece,
I've got my hand up.
It was just on
Apologies.
the engagement I was picking up, that's all, sorry.
Yeah, I think if we're going to spend these vast amounts of money, I think we really need to try and take the community with us and judge what they want. You know, that the last consultation for the budget, it was the lowest priority of all. And I think when we are making savage cuts to education and putting money into this, I think we really need to ask the public what they really want.
Thanks, Councillor. So consultation is important, and we recommend that. Councillor Pratt, then Councillor Bledsoe. Then I think I will end it there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to say yes to the consultation, but it is just again, every time that we, or not just as anyone conducts a consultation, it does attract the naysayers of our world, and that's fine. They have a voice, but we do have to bear in mind that we will get a lot of negativity over and don't do anything, and like shut it down. Build more coal-fired fire stations. They're amazing, or all that sort of stuff. So the analysis of that consultation needs to be considered very carefully on the aspirations of this local authority, the aspirations of this country and the globe compared to what our residents say, and it will be for our cabinet to take some leadership on that and go, maybe that our residents are wrong and we need to pursue how we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. And I guess that would, consult, do some work before we consult. Don't just say what you want. This is what, as you said, leadership is leadership, and that's what the Cabinet is there for, to form a strategy and then consult on that. And hopefully that strategy would be something that could take people on that journey, not something that would turn them off. Councillor Bledsoe, you have the final word on this.
My final word, Mr. Chair, is just to pass on my apologies. I need to leave the meeting and to thank you all for a very productive meeting. I need to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if we're all agreed then, do we have Meryl, are you happy with what we've said?
There's no dissent, Chair, so happy.
Thank you very much. That closes that item, which brings us, I've got a script here that was written for someone else, but I can read it. Item 5, the information report, Q3 performance, and I'll ask scrutiny officers to summarise this because it is for noting.
Thank you, Chair. So following the report of the Q3 performance 24-25 to COSC on the 17th of March for the monitoring of the quarterly performance, the report, performance dashboard and updated regulatory tracker for Q3 are reported to the subsequent meeting of each subject overview and scrutiny committee for information on the performance within the respective remit of each committee. So the Q3 performance report is attached as Appendix A, and the appendices to that report are attached as Appendix 1 being the corporate performance dashboard, and Appendix 2 being the regulatory tracker. And I think, as we discussed earlier, we'd pulled out the reds and ambers for within this committee's remit, and it was down to the committee to note the content of the Q3 performance report, but also to have any regard to any of the items that they would want to add to his forward work programme at the next in the next item that we look at. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Meryl. Does anyone have any comment on this? It is for noting, and the intention, I think, was to the assumption would be that people have read this, and if they have concerns or people want to pull things forward, we can put them into the forward work programme in the next item. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'm just going to go as recommended by the scrutiny team. I'm just going to go straight to. I'm just going to highlight one issue, okay? Just for the brevity of this meeting, but it's page 72. It's a red, and it's in respect of increasing employment and training opportunities in the county borough for young people aged 16 to 24. So if you look at that, So the Youth Guarantee programme it's a Welsh Government programme, and it's like a kind of promise, if you like. The Welsh Government would make sure that every so-called NEET would have an opportunity for employment or training, and there was funding backed up to distribute to local authorities and their employability teams. So when I worked in the Vale, I received funding regarding, specifically Youth Guarantee, and the idea was you'd focus on a Youth Guarantee for 16 to 24-year-olds, because it's seen as one of the most crucial aspects of somebody's employment, life, career, because if you don't get it right there, you find that they don't take up skills and they don't take up employment opportunities as they grow older. So it is crucial to make sure that that age group is engaged at that particular point, and that's why the Welsh Government focused on it. But, so Youth Guarantee funding has come to an end. However, for the report to say, because we don't no longer have any Youth Guarantee funding, then the commitment, which is there, increase employment and training opportunities, we're going to remove that commitment. We're just shooting ourselves in the foot, because they will be providing employment and training opportunities under Employment Bridgend. That's an absolute cert. They will be providing those opportunities, but so instead of saying we will continue with this ethos within the Employability Bridgend kind of holistic model and provision, if you like, they've just said we're removing it. So it's this backward thinking that it baffles me, to be honest with you, and I'm disappointed to see that. And there's no need for it. You're just making yourself as a council look worse than you actually are. So I don't know really, Chair, what we can do about that, apart from to say they need to go back to the drawing board and rethink their response to that commitment and the action plan. And I have no doubt there may be other examples as we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think Mayor wanted to come in. Remember, I couldn't agree with you more. And just because it's not a specific objective, we will do X by Y. It is increase employment and training opportunities. You may not need money for that. You just need to, yeah. So I completely agree. So I'd just be guided by Merrill as to whether we can feed that back.
I think you're quite correct. There will still be employment and training opportunities delivered to young people aged 16 to 24. It's just the end of the grant funding for that specific. I wonder whether the WBO 2.2.1 relates directly to that. Is a PI directly relating to that? But what you could perhaps make a recommendation for, that there be a relevant performance indicator for the description, then, not just because we haven't got the funding. It may well fall within education and not this committee in the future, but you could word something to that effect, Chair, if you're happy.
I would support that, but Councillor Blundell, I'm only borrowing his seat, so Councillor Blundell wants to come in.
Thanks, Councillor William, Chair. No, what I was going to say is this was only brought up in cost, and I think the idea was that removing sort of the work done by the Youth Guarantee Scheme was the part we're removing, but actually there is going to be, I think Alex agreed that there was going to be a mechanism how we model it, how we keep track of our work is going to be put in, and that probably, as Meryl said, is going to be done under the Youth Services Directorate, which is in education, but it might just be worth us writing and asking for clarification from Alex and Kate and the team about that. Thanks.
Does that satisfy your concern, or is it perhaps not strong enough, Councillor Davies? I just think it's a disappointing. I'm with you. It's a very disappointing. Yeah. So if we make a recommendation for clarity and along the lines of Councillor Blundell. Sorry, Councillor Williams.
No, I was going to concur with Councillor Davis. I think just to have that word in there, the commitment to be removed, especially when it's down to it looks as if it's down to the funding has been removed when we've just discussed £60 million on climate change, and that seems to be very low priority, and we can get rid of that.
So we'll recommend that we
absolutely
see clarity, and I would say express disappointment, but see clarity and perhaps surprise over the wording. Yeah.
This actual PI will be removed, but it's not to say it can't be replaced with a PI that measures the same thing wherever it's been delivered. And you could make that recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. If everyone's in favour of that. So that brings us to item 6, which is the forward work programme. And I will ask the Scrutiny Officer to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from members' consideration of the forward work programme at the previous meeting, the forward work programme for this committee is attached as Appendix A. The subject overview and Scrutiny Committee's forward work programme will be included in the next report to Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, with any updates from each Scrutiny Committee meeting included. The Recommendations Monitoring Action Sheet is attached as Appendix B to track responses to the committee's recommendations at the previous meetings. I'll hand back to you, Chair, for any questions from members.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the report or items for consideration for future committees? Councillor Jenkins.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would just like to bring forward, I think, what is a high priority from the number of public, and particularly that the report refers to future consideration should be giving consideration to the public and their needs and etc. I would like to place on the forward works programme or get a report based upon the state of our highways, and particularly that on the road resurfacing programme that was promised by this administration and the extra funding to go with it. But our roads are deteriorating, not only County Borough-wide, UK-wide, but I'm concerned about the County Borough, its policy, and its ever-deteriorating road system. It precludes people from travelling. They're looking for alternative routes where the roads are not too bad, blocking up side streets, having rat runs elsewhere, and in turn creating more divots and roads and driving irrationally. And I think it's well worth us having a look at that, if it can be possibly brought forward, that it has significant consequences for us all, the states of our highways.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. It's certainly something, I recognise that. I avoid certain roads now because of the condition of them. So if everyone's in favour, that we can ask to put that in a future committee meeting. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I got a bee in my bonnet about this. 2020, 2021, this authority commissioned consultants to come up with a report on the 3 major parks in our borough. That report was concluded and has been sat awaiting being put before Cabinet since November 2022. For some reason, I think I know why, it hasn't gone before Cabinet. I urge this committee to pressurise the Cabinet to receive the report done by Just Solutions into the 3 major parks in the borough, which includes Newbridge Fields, so we can come before the Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I think we've got CAT transfers on is it on there already, or it's certainly been discussed? And I wondered whether we could do CAT transfers and perhaps, sorry, Mayor, include the major parks within that, specifically include that.
If you wanted to have the major parks item, do you want to request a pre-decision for Cabinet? So it comes here before Cabinet?
That would be fine. But I've been told that it's confidential. and I can't discuss it, or I can't publish it.
We've had
Like a council was,
confidential
but I mean,
report.
we can still request.
Confidential report.
We could discuss confidential report, or we could discuss. But generally, it's what it's. I'd like to, it's for the permanent chair to discuss this, but it would make sense perhaps to bundle it in with Cat and have a good session about all of this sort of stuff. But I'll leave that with you if everyone's happy. Who's left there? Sorry, Councillor Jenkins and then Councillor Davis. Councillor Jenkins, please.
Yes, again, I'm just seeking your advice now. How wide is the scope of things that we can discuss, or should I just address, a letter concerned either to the leader or to the cabinet member, etc. Because I'm concerned widely upon. So I would take your advice on this. I'll try and keep it brief. The County Borough of Bridgend, like many other county boroughs, have a number of commercial and residential properties that are taken out of our rateable value, left to deteriorate, which flies in the face of the latest reports and reports we've been given by officers, by the money presented by Welsh Government, by this community council, County Borough Council, to help improve, revitalise, rejuvenate town centres, when the policy rated with the rateable value people sits with properties are taken out of rateable value, deteriorating. Nobody can force them to do things with it other than building control or something like that. But we are losing a lot of revenue. And when they're taken out of the valuation listing, they pay no valuation rates at all. While the rest of us are struggling to pay our council tax, there's a significant amount of properties getting away with paying no rates whatsoever and doing nothing at all with the properties. So I don't know whether we can bring that into something to be discussed. I don't know. So I seek advice on that, that's all.
I think that probably is within the remit of this committee, is it not, Meryl?
Can I ask for some clarification? Are you talking about empty properties that have just become sort of run down and not lived in? Because council tax is now chargeable, isn't it, on empty properties, I think, after a period of time.
Would it not cover the empty property strategy?
The officer's right there. But if the owners apply to take them out of the valuation listing, a BCBC can object, as I know they have done in some. But when the valuation office removes them from the listing, BCBC has no authority to place a council charge on them. And that is concerning.
So if we request that empty properties, because I think that's come to us before, hasn't it? An update at some future
you
time.
You had a report on empty properties, but I think this is something slightly different. I think we need to speak to different officers to find out a bit more about the scope of it, and if we can certainly put the request in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins and Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree with all the suggestions. The two raised around highways and parks, they're on the list anyway. But I think what would be really helpful is if we somehow put some timescales to these proposals, because they just drop off, don't they, when something else comes forward. So I know they can't be specific about, a particular month or a particular committee meeting, but I think so. For example, I think it's reasonable to request that the first scrutiny meeting of this three in, say, the autumn would include something on highways, something on parks, if not before that. My own personal interest is regarding the Shared Prosperity Fund. I think that's been delayed again. I'd just like to see some dates, approximate dates, attached to every one of these subjects, because otherwise it just goes on and drifts, and I don't think that's fair on this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, and again, there's probably something for Councillor Blundell to deal with, but I would agree with you, and obviously we had something dropped in today. It would be nice to have something on the list dropped in rather than something from left field, wouldn't it? Thanks. So if there's no other suggestions for the forward work programme or anything on that item, I think that brings us to the end, is it? So just urgent items, item 7. I haven't been notified of any urgent items, so I'd like to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Cheers.